privilege and honor on behalf of the government and the people of the Republic of China, Taiwan, to show our fraternity with the Gambia government and the people by presenting 2 checks sponsoring 2 programs. The first program is the sponsoring of 7 Gambia young doctors to study resident doctors training in the Gambia. The amount is $154,000. The second check is the first payment of the renovation of RVTH. The amount is $725,000. The total amount of 2 checks is approximately about $6.8 million.
The Secretary General and Head of the Civil Service, Usman Jame, hails the donor for their gesture whilst he yearns for a greater collaboration.
On behalf of the government of the Gambia, on behalf of His Excellency the President, Sheikh Professor Alhaji Dr. Yaya AJJ Jammeh and his government and the people of the Gambia, I want to say again thank you to you and through you to the government of Taiwan and the people of Taiwan for the support that you continue to render to the government and people of this country.
The cash injection will go into financing the Gambia's health service, something the minister responsible for health says the sector is of utmost priority to the government of the Gambia.
Nonetheless, this is also helping the health sector in terms of health system strengthening. This is what we need to build capacity, and by specializing our young doctors from the University of the Gambia Medical School, we really go a long way in addressing many of our health issues. And this is how we can move the health sector agenda forward.
The $72,000 will be used for the Phase 2 renovation of RVTH, whilst the other check paid the educational expenses of 7 Gambian medical doctors already studying in Ghana. For Grts News, I am Fatou Jassi.
The sum was $154,000 instead of the $154 as earlier mentioned. We apologize for that. Nigerians in the Gambia on Saturday joined their compatriots the world over to celebrate their country's 51st independence anniversary. The event, which took place amidst the ambience of cultural performances, was used by High Commissioner Esther Audu to call for the practice of cooperation in tackling global challenges. Here is Grts Modlamin Sise.
The Nigerian community in the Gambia joined by their High Commissioner have been in celebration. Big Brother of Africa has clocked 51 years of nationhood. The ambience and pageantry that came with the event was great. Even under the falling rains, spirits were unflagging. At 51, Nigeria still prides itself in being an indivisible, heterogeneous federal republic, determined to promote unity in diversity. This was well demonstrated at the celebration, with each of the various tribes well catered for, both in terms of logistics and stage performance. Delivering the independence message, High Commissioner Esther John Andu went global, emphasizing the significance of international cooperation in tackling, among others, the menaces of climate change and terrorism.
We must all work together to provide solutions to the global threats of climate change and its economic and social challenges. We condemn the recent bomb blast of the United Nations building in Abuja, which is a security challenge to the whole world, and call on other nations to join hands with Nigeria and the whole world to fight terrorism. We thank those that have sympathized with Nigeria and the entire United Nations family for those who lost their lives and properties in these unfortunate incidents. I call on all other nations to join hands together to promote peace and security for economic and social growth of our continent, Africa, and the entire world.
As they celebrate, Nigerians are still preaching the gospel of association, a principle they feel is fundamental to their success away from home.
You have to come together as one. You have to speak one voice, because when we come together, it's where we can solve each other's problem. You cannot go outside that is not your country. You will not join with your association, because nothing like association, because association is very, very important to join with.
The president of the Nigerian community in the Gambia was thankful for what he described as a combination of good leaderships, ideal for the success of Nigerians living in the Smiling Coast.
I would like to use this opportunity to thank His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, for what he has been doing. And in Nigeria, yes, Nigeria is taking a better shape in this few months of his administration. And also, I have to thank His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Chief Professor Alhaji Dr. AJJ Jammeh, and his government for giving us a very conducive environment to celebrate.
So it is Big Brother Nigeria at 51. The country is currently enjoying a stable democracy, but like others, the challenges that lie ahead of the great nation are not light in weight. How Big Brother Nigeria sails through such a global phenomenon as encapsulated in the High Commissioner's speech is clear. The oil-rich nation will rely on consolidated international cooperation such as the one it has with the Gambia government. Modul Amin Sise, GRTS News.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Welcome back. Steve Jobs' battle with cancer was long, public and painful. CNN's chief medical correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta gives us a rundown of his medical history.
Well, it's hard to believe the news about Steve Jobs, but I can tell you this health history of his dates back at least 8 years, back to 2003. Many people don't realize that. He was diagnosed with a pancreatic abnormality at that time. For some time after his diagnosis, Steve Jobs actually attempted to treat this tumor with non-traditional therapies, herbal medications, for example. This is a man who had traveled the world looking at health systems all over the world and decided he would attempt this. In 2004, he did undergo an operation to try and remove this tumor. Now, one of the things that's worth pointing out is that when the doctor saw this mass, this tumor in Steve Jobs' pancreas, they assumed it was one of the worst types of tumors out there, an adenocarcinoma. The survival rates for adenocarcinomas are really abysmal, 20% one-year survival rates, 4% five-year survival rates. Steve Jobs tells a story about when the doctors did the biopsy and finally got the cells back to look under the microscope. They were literally in tears because, in fact, Mr. Jobs did not have an adenocarcinoma but had what's known as a neuroendocrine tumor. Now, neuroendocrine tumor is also obviously a cancer, but a more favorable one. The survival rate's about 50% at 5 years. The story of the next several years of Steve Jobs were a story of a man who really fought like crazy against this tumor, undergoing therapies, getting a liver transplant literally by cover of night in 2009, traveling to Switzerland for, again, non-traditional therapies, doing everything he could. You saw him essentially start to become quite gaunt, probably as a result of the tumor in his pancreas, which controls digestive enzymes, controls hormones in the body, but also just the cancer itself, causing the wasting that is so often associated with tumors like this. Steve Jobs was probably on various medications to control those hormonal changes, but in the end, 8 years, longer than most people survive with this type of tumor, despite all the therapies, despite all the treatment, despite the fight. Steve Jobs died of likely this neuroendocrine tumor at the age of 56.
And before we go, a reminder of our headlines. Vice President Jai Seidi and the Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth discussed the Gambia's forthcoming elections among series of governance-related matters on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session in New York. 800 ghost workers have been expunged from government payroll as the Finance Ministry pursues a reform program to sanitize the civil service. The Gambia Bar Association has staged a boycott of the courts to express displeasure over the sentencing of lawyer Moses Richards. and the world is mourning billionaire Steve Jobs, a technology genius and co-founder of the software giant Apple. You are reminded that you can also follow Grts programs live on our website at